Yo, sorry for this dramatic intro, but I just think it's remarkable that a lot of advanced cubers are starting to use pseudo-slotting, but yet you cannot find a lot about it online. And most videos you see are examples of people that assume that you already know what pseudo-slotting is, but for example me, I didn't know what pseudo-slotting was from the beginning, and watching the example solves was kind of confusing because they just start doing it right away. And that's why I made this tutorial, to get you comfortable with pseudo-slotting and to help you start experimenting on your own. Now for this video, you should be really comfortable with edge orientation and also with keyhole, and if you're not comfortable with any of those, I will leave a video in the description so you can check that out. But if that's the case, this video is probably not for you, but if you get the concept and you can play with it, why not, of course. It's super fun to play with and I hope I can teach you something, so let's get right into it. I think the best way to learn Pseudo F2L is to first look at a multi-slotting trick you can apply to your normal F2L. I learned this from Felix, but if you've seen Jayden's video, you should also know what I'm talking about. So when you come across a case where one edge of a pair is solved and one corner of an adjacent pair is solved, we can solve both using pseudo-slotting. What we do in a case like this is move the unsolved pieces together using the D layer. And then we can solve these two pieces as if we would with a normal pair. Now to solve this pair in the slot, you will really need to look at edge orientation. For example, this case can easily be confused with this case, which you can insert like so. But if we do the same to this one and bring back the D layer, we can see that the edge is flipped. So instead, when we look at edge orientation, we can see that this edge is not oriented. But if you hold it like so, it is oriented. So we can solve it with R and U moves from this side, which we would do like so. And then we bring back the D layer and voila, magic happens. If you didn't understand any of what I just said, please watch the videos in the description or just come back in a few years. I'll give one more example of this multi-slotting trick with a scramble so you can follow along. So in this scramble we can see that we have a blue and red edge solved and a red and green corner of the adjacent pair. So once again, if we bring together the unsolved pieces like so and look for the pieces we need to solve, which are right here, we can see that this edge is oriented, so we can solve it using only R, U or L moves. And looking at the corner, we can see that it's this case, which you can solve like so. Then if we bring back the D layer, we solve the two pairs. Now if you understood this, you might already understand more of pseudo-slotting than you think, because the last example was the case that Sebastian Valle had in his 4x4 world record single. Pretty cool, right? I really urge you to practice this multi-slotting trick, because being able to solve two non-matching F2L pieces will really help you in Pseudo F2L. You can easily set up this case yourself by inserting a corner of one pair and the edge of the adjacent pair, and then you have set up the case which I just showed you. Let's move on to Pseudo F2L. So what does this trick have to do with Pseudo F2L? Well, with this case, we're actually solving a pseudo pair. Pseudo means fake in Greek, so we're basically making fake pairs. A pseudo pair is just a combination of an edge with a corner that don't need to be of the same F2L pair. This means that we have the choice to solve 4 different pseudo pairs in each slot. We just need to make sure that we solve the edge and the corner in the correct position. And that's the difference with normal F2L. In normal F2L, we look for corner edge pairs with the same color, but in Pseudo F2L, we can choose any corner and edge pair. So with this multi-slotting example, we solve the blue and orange edge with the orange and green corner, because we know if we do so, we solve both pairs at once. But if we take away all the solved F2L pairs and only solve the pseudo pair by bringing the slot of the edge and the corner together, like so, we have solved an edge and a corner in the right place. Right now you might think, how does it help us to have a random edge and corner solved in the right place? Well, if we keep solving pseudo pairs, we can see that everything falls into place. Don't worry if you're like, what? Right now, I will explain everything I do and do a bunch of examples. Let's get started with what I just did. There's a scramble so you can follow along if you want to. I will just make the cross. Now, since we're doing Pseudo F2L, you don't yet need to align the cross. So in normal F2L, you would probably go for the first F2L pair that you see, which are these two. But in Pseudo F2L, we can actually make a pair of any corner and edge combination. So for example, I can work with these two, or I can go for these two, or I can go for this corner with this edge, or I can just do a normal pair like these two. That's actually also a pseudo pair. So, but let's say the first thing we see is this one. What we do first is look for the slot of the edge. which is right here. And then all we need to do is make sure that the slot of the corner matches the one of the edge, like so. Then we can insert it. And then we have pseudo pair 1 solved. Let's say the next thing you see are these two. So first again we look for the slot of the edge, which is right here, and then make sure that the corner is underneath, which is already the case, and we can solve it like a normal F2L pair. Now the thing with pseudo F2L is that we can really easily take advantage of solved corners or edges. For example, I saw that we already have an edge solved right here. With normal F2L, this is not the best case. It's not bad, but it's not the best. We have to take out the edge and insert it. But what we can do right now is actually just insert the corner, because we have a slot right here with the right corner and no piece is solved. So we can just insert the corner like so. And we know right now that if we align the D layer at the end, this F2L pair will be solved. So let's go to the next pseudo F2L, which are these two. Now this one is flipped, but we can just bring the corner underneath like so and solve it. Align the D layer and wow. Now previously I said that when you solve a pseudo pair, you have to bring the two slots together. For example, if you want to solve this pseudo pair, you have to make sure that the green and red edge is connected to the green and orange corner. But that's not really the case. You just need to make sure that the edge and the corner are solved in the right slots. So this case is not the best case in normal F2L. But in pseudo F2L we can take advantage of that by first inserting the edge and then inserting the corner into the back, like so. And then we have solved the two pieces in the right slots. So if you already have the corner slot in the back, you can solve this in only 5 moves. There are many more F2L cases that you can make easier with pseudo F2L, but I think that it's best that you experiment with that by yourself. Another thing that you will often see in pseudo F2L is that when we finish our cross and already have an edge in place, we will insert a random corner just to make sure that we form a pseudo pair out of these two. For example, like so. Now we have a pseudo pair. And we need to do that because of an important rule in pseudo F2L. That is that we have to have an even amount of pieces solved. So for each edge, we need to make sure that we have a solved corner, and vice versa of course. And you need to make sure that you have this even amount of edges and corners solved before your last pair, because otherwise you're not taking full advantage of pseudo F2L. Right now we know enough to do our example solves. Don't worry if you don't understand something yet. I will do 5 example solves, and if you don't understand something after that, you can always just comment on the video and I will make sure that I respond to that. Now for these example solves, I'm not claiming that the way I solve them is the best way to do it, but I am pretty sure that it will make you comfortable with the method. I will also leave a link in the description of example solves of Tymon, who's probably the best at pseudo F2L right now. Okay, so let's get started with the first solve. Now if there's nothing special for the cross, I will already solve it and you can just follow along. Now the first thing I want to stress with this example is that if the first thing you see are two normal F2L pairs, don't hesitate to do them first, because it is nice to have more possibilities with your F2L, but just make sure that you use the most obvious pair. So I would do this one first because this one is oriented as well. I will align my cross, do these two in the back, like a normal F2L pair. And now we come to the case that I showed you earlier, which is just 5 moves. These two. Then the first thing I see is this pair, which is a normal pair. I can solve it like that. And because we have only solved one pseudo pair to this point, we come to the multi-slotting trick that I showed in the beginning, where you bring the two unsolved pieces together, but maybe now you can understand it in the sense of pseudo F2L. So we're trying to solve this orange-green edge, which is red and green corner, so we bring the two pieces together, and we can solve them like a normal pair. Like so. I will already solve the cross. Now the first thing that we see when we solve the cross is that we have a solved edge right here. So we know that we have to insert a corner before the last pair. But we have an easy corner right now, so we might as well just insert it right away. We just need to make sure that we move the edge away, because if we insert it like this, it will remove a solved piece, which we cannot do. So we can just bring it away by doing a wide U, like so, and then insert the corner into its spot, right here. Then the next thing I see are these two, which I will solve by rotating and aligning the D, like a normal pair. And the next thing you might want to do right now are these two, but just make sure that you don't do that, because this is a solved edge and you cannot remove it. So it's better to do these two. And we can bring the two spots together and orient this one by just doing a wide U prime. And then we can solve these two like a normal pair, like so. Then if we bring it back, we only have one pair left to solve. Like this. Next, solve. So the first thing I see with this solve are these two. And the edge is already oriented, so we just need to make sure that in the slot the corner is underneath, which is the case, and we can just easily solve it. Like so. Then these two is just a 3-move insert. We just need to make sure that we have the corner in the right place. We can insert it. Then these two are already lined up. Just like so. Then we can align it with a white U. Then we just have these two left. Pretty easy. Next one. Okay, so for this cross I'm going to explain a bit. Since we can take advantage of solved pieces, we can just try to make sure that when we solve the cross, this one will be at its right place. We can easily do that by doing the cross like this. Moving this one in the back, and during the rest of the cross, it will stay there. Now it happened that the corner was also placed in the right spot. So potentially if we do a D back, we have an X cross. But let's not do that right now, because we're doing Pseudo F2L, we don't need to align the cross anyways. The next thing that I see is that this edge is oriented. And we can easily solve it with this corner right here, which is already lined up. So we can do it like so. Then I see these two with already an oriented edge. So we need to bring the corner spot underneath. And then we can solve these two. Then we have an easy made pair right in front of us. So once again, bring the corner underneath the spot and insert it. Just like that. Next one. Okay, so with this scramble, we can see that we already have two edges solved right here. So we need to make sure that we solve two corners before we come to our last pair. So let's start with this really convenient corner right here. Just doing D to align it. Insert it right here. Now before I go to insert another corner, I can see that these two are just a 3-move insert. If I bring the corner in the right place, I can just insert them right away. So right now I need to insert a corner, because otherwise we'll come to our last pair with a solved edge. So this corner slot is right underneath it, so I can insert it just like that. Then if I do a D prime, we solve 3 F2L pairs with only like 12 moves. So last pair, like a normal one, and it's done. This was actually the scramble I got for my first sub 10 Pseudo F2L solve, which is pretty crazy. It was only 12 moves for 3 pairs, and although my look ahead sucked, because it was only 12 moves, I could still get a great time on it. So let's get to the conclusion of Pseudo F2L. I will first sum up the good and the bad. I'll talk a bit about that and everything will make sense. Let's start with the good. First of all, you have more options and freedom in your F2L. Compared to normal F2L, where you have to find the F2L pairs with the same colors, you can work with any edge and corner in Pseudo F2L. And that results in the second good thing, which is kind of a result of the previous one, but Pseudo F2L is more optimal in move count. And part of the reason that it is less moves is because you can take advantage of solved pieces. For example, if you already have an edge solved, you can just insert a corner, vice versa, of course. And the second reason is because you can turn bad cases into good cases. I did some examples of that in my example solves. Also the one case I showed you, you know what I'm talking about. 5 moves, super easy compared to the long, not so easy F2L case, you know which one I'm talking about. So yeah, you can turn a lot of bad cases into good cases, which is cool. But you also have to change the D layer all the time, but still it results in less moves. And the last thing I want to talk about is not really a good point compared to normal F2L, but you don't need to know any new algorithms for Pseudo F2L. Well, some cases you kind of have to experiment with, for example, that example I showed you, but no new algorithms is great. So let's talk about the bad things right now. And the biggest bad thing about Pseudo F2L is the look ahead. It's a disaster. First of all, your look ahead is so accustomed to find F2L pairs. And right now you have to look at all the F2L pieces, edge orientation, and also you constantly have to keep track of the D layer, which is... I've been playing with it for about a week now, and I've had one sub 10, and with normal F2L I average around 9.5, I would say. So to have 1 sub 10 is kind of sad, but I do think that with a lot of practice, you can get really good at it. The only person that I know of right now who's good at the look ahead in Pseudo F2L is Tymon, and Tymon is kind of known to practice a lot, so maybe that has something to do with that. The next bad thing I can say about it is sometimes it can be kind of awkward to work with the D layer, but it's kind of awkward to be using RUDL moves all the time. So also wide use, that's also part of it. The last thing I want to say is that when you try to do Pseudo F2L, you sometimes might make things unnecessarily difficult. You're looking for F2L pieces and you're looking for pseudo pairs, but sometimes it's just way easier to just go for a normal F2L pair and everything works fine with normal F2L. So sometimes it doesn't really make sense to do Pseudo F2L. But let's forget the bad and the good things about Pseudo F2L. I do think that you can apply some of the pseudo techniques in your normal F2L. I will make a separate video about that, applying pseudo F2L techniques in your normal F2L. Basically when you should be using pseudo techniques and when you shouldn't. And I didn't really talk about it in this video is because I just wanted to get you comfortable with the method. So that's for one of the next videos, so make sure you subscribe, please, thank you. Yeah, I do think that Pseudo F2L is a lot of fun to play with. I'm really interested to see how Pseudo F2L will evolve in the future with, for example, Tymon or Jayden McNeill, who's playing a lot with it recently. I guess that's it for this video. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions or just want to tell that I suck at Pseudo F2L, just tell me in the comments and I will get back to you. I hope you liked this video. I will try to do more tutorials if you like my style of doing tutorials. So yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next video. Ciao. I'm trying to pet this alpaca right here. Is it working? Oh, nice alpaca.